All right, y'all. So I want to talk a little bit about um, holy desire, being single, and just all of that good stuff. So let's see where we can go with this here. So a few days ago, I came across this video or this post that basically answered all of my questions. Um, and I'm trying to look at my pictures for reference, but it's kind of cutting me off here. Okay, so yeah. So I'm going to call this the prayer for holy desire. My name is Maria Chung Willoughby. I'm a 50-year-old woman. Just celebrated my Jubilee birthday December 15th. So that means really, actually, I'm going into my 51st year, 51 and a quarter. And as a middle aged woman, I'm going through different things. The rumor is perimenopause is on the way. It may be here, and I don't know. Just as a woman in general, I've talked to younger women that said, hey, it's not only you, it's us too, because I'm going through crazy hormonal changes where, I'm normal like 1 week out of the month. And being a woman of this age, there's other things that come into play. I have a Holy Spirit, a holy heart, but, Mother Nature also takes a toll on everything. So I came across, and I've had a few instances, and I've gone to different churches. I have this thing with the Art of Good called the Christian Connection, where it's basically the community outreach to the churches. Basically, it's me doing everything by myself, and it can be really difficult because as a woman moving from marginalization through momentum to more metamorphosis to becoming a mogul of overcoming systemic, hopefully, God willing, of overcoming eventually systemic barriers and social dynamics, you are gaslit a whole lot, because sometimes, what's on the outside doesn't match what you really have, the true passion desire you have on the inside. It's so easy for people to have different perceptions of you. Um, and there's been lots of situations where I talk openly, not lots of situations, but there's situations where, the impact is so hard that I talk openly about, the different levels of singleness. But anyhow, I came across this post that says celibacy becomes easy for a woman when she's disgusted by the idea of being touched without love. And that was my aha moment. I just came across this a couple days ago. But I know for me, typically, I'm a woman that's single and satisfied, married to Christ 95% of the time. But, um, quite recently, I have situations, and that's where the purpose of my organization is to mingle with other people for that interconnectivity. I'm a loner by nature. I'm quiet. I love to learn. So you can sit me in front of a computer or something like that all day and I'm good to go. I just love to learn. But it's something to want to convert what you learn and what you know into something that brings and joins community together. And that's what my goal is, because none of us is an island. There may be very sparse instances of people that are like ourselves, but the goal is to connect, because when you connect with each other, synapses kind of spark off. But anyhow, so that's where the sanctified, empowered, so the single and satisfied, married to Christ, that's for devout singles. Basically, all you do is for God. You're not really trying to hear or do anything else. Direct connection with God. Single and satisfied, married to Christ. Then there's the second level of the singles ministries, and that's C's, where it's sanctified expression of empowered singleness, where you're keeping it holy, you're mixing and mingle with other singles, and you're just having fun together because you may be college students that's away that might want to have other people around you. You don't have your family with you, or you may be a loner that just desire to have other people with the same intellectual interests or humanitarian interests or social interests or moral interests that you have. So it's connecting with other people for common causes. Then the last one, and I had to change this, is actually CX, SEEEX, and it's going to change eventually, and that's sensual energy exchange. And this is what I've never gotten to this level until recently, because that song says I almost gave up. I did almost give up. I mean, just going to all these churches and being gaslit to the point where it's just like instant flammable, flaming to the sky, where you just get tired and you just need love. And I think that just like poets in general, or people that are poetic, or, their verbiage has been deemed essential or whatever, that a lot of times, you're just very loving people. And with that, I have to say, this came about because everything was good. I was on the straight and narrow. And then I think one Sunday, I went to go run errands, and I noticed how much love I need. And for me, when I go to churches and things, I've like for the few years I've had this thing called accountability partners, and I was amazed. And this goes so much into history over the churches, but that this church that I had, the pastor actually used the term accountability partner. That was something that I was using on chat lines and stuff when chat lines were a thing. And that's what I was looking for. And people were like, oh, that's a cult. And I'm like, no, you're just trying to get with other people that are like minded and want to do the right thing. And they was like, well, don't nobody want to be perfect. And I would get banned for trying to start a cult, you know. And then because that pastor particularly was using accountability partner, and this is before I had a chance to express it to him, I started using the term growth partner, which, is again, you're partnering with other individuals, which happens holistically anyhow without you signing any contracts or anything. But with contracts, it's an understanding that this is why we're getting together for nothing else, right? But the sensual energy exchange, it's for singles that struggle with celibacy. And celibacy isn't just physical celibacy, but mental celibacy. The Bible says if you thought it, you did it. But on my, and my changing, my thought mindset is changing a lot on these different things because going through the churches has opened my eyes to a lot of people. That song by Haley, A Little Unholy, they are really, really unholy in these churches. And, God forbid, if you happen to be, and I'm not one of those women on that level, but a woman of just a little bit of pull or just a little bit of something, you could probably, I mean, but anyhow, the thought that I had coming back from running my errands that Sunday evening, really late, 10, 11, was like, I need a lot of love. And with these churches, the ones that have active accountability, with the one that has a active accountability partnership, um, you know, hugs. I like hugs. And typically, there's deacons and stuff assigned to you, and those are the ones that I get my hugs from, or I did. But it's dwindled down, a lot. And I now have one primary deacon there that I get my hugs from, and then on occasion I can ask other females, on occasion older females, and it's funny I say older because I am an older female at this point, but to get my hugs from as well. And I thought about how much love I need, and then the people that are willing to give me a hug that really, they can see that I really, really need it, you know, I can't really allow myself to get a hug from them because I know that this is a temporary thing. I need a hug that's going to last for like 72 hours, and I need to write a poem about that because that's what I need. I need that much love, you guys. And I thought about it, and I was like, and that's really not practical at 51 years old because you're not young. If you're 20, okay, you're a college student, y'all hug all day and all night because if we were like us, we were like a bunch of kittens. We all went together into the same dorm room. We all cuddled up in the bed forever. And then when I got a little bit older and I was just like, okay, finish college, well, I was like, I need a friend or whatever. And I didn't really need one. It's just I wanted to experience some things. And the only way that you're supposed to do that in the right way is to get a friend, quote unquote friend. That's what I did. And, and it was great. All the stress was relieved. Lockdown from 5 p.m. on Friday afternoon to 6 a.m. Monday morning. And what's funny about this is that recently there was a church conference at a church where the lady was talking about how in her 20s they used to go to the clubs and unfortunately, they were looking for certain types of men when the club let out because they just wanted to go to Waffle House. For me, I was different. I was a cuddle bunny, nothing promiscuous as far as being intimate in a way, that could cause some changes. But I love to be close. I love to cuddle. That's how I am. I'm very loving, or was. I think I still have that spirit, but again, at this age, it's just really not practical because at 50, 51, you're half a century old. Not only that, but everybody's people don't have holy love anymore. It's not a lot of people have agape love. They may have instances, and so most people are married, and so that's kind of frowned upon, depending on the couples you're dealing with. Um, and then you're 51. People this age, they compose or reserve themselves, and then you don't want to be all hugged up with you know people half your age, so it's a difficult type thing. So the best outlet that I have is one, exercise, and two, my imagination, and with the imagination, that's where the twist comes. You're using your imagination. Are you using it for things that promote love and harmony and peace? Or are you just being ratchet? So that's what we have to be careful of. So um, that was the thing that really got me again, holy desire. And it made me that aha moment that came with me seeing that saying that celibacy becomes easy for a woman when she's disgusted by the idea of being touched without love. I don't like being touched at all. If I don't sense genuineness, purity, authenticity, or how somehow, me interacting with you in any way in your space is going to grow and develop you or vice versa, I don't want it. You know what I'm saying? There could be somebody that I actually absolutely loved hugs from. And I've had this, even people in authority like pastors and things like that. Actually, absolutely, you know, I'll give you case scenarios, hypothetically speaking. Again, all of that, this is just hypothetical, unless, you know of an experience that's similar. But, there was a pastor that I would never even touch ever, 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 because, again, keeping that physical boundary. And not for any, just because, physical boundaries. But then one day there was a situation where we had kind of an altercation spiritually or professionally. And in order for him to show me that it was okay, that, you know, the little boy in him came out. He wanted to be forgiven and that we're still good. He doesn't like to be mad with anybody. He rushed up to me and gave me a hug, and I thought it was so beautiful, and I hugged him back. And then after that, I realized, hey, he was being childlike and acknowledging that he really needed a hug just by running over and giving it to me, like somebody's TT, and he's a nephew, and he didn't even care about all that, And I thought that was wonderful because it opened the door for me. But me being older, I have to ask permission. This is an adult, by the way, but still, I don't want to be weird. So I would ask permission, hey, is it okay for me to hug you? And he says yes. And so I was enjoying it. I was enjoying getting my hugs because I know this person was genuine, authentic. They're not perfect. They made mistakes. But the agape love, genuine love, authentic love, pure love, innocent love of just another human being, was there. And I appreciated that. But then there was another situation where I saw that, he stood 10 toes down on whatever it was he did wrong, probably because of things people whispered in his ear. And then I didn't want him to touch me ever again. I don't care. Forget about a hug. I don't even want you to take your finger and poke me with it. You know what I'm saying? Don't poke me on the shoulder. Don't touch me at all. And I meant it. And something inside, they said the word is in your heart. Something inside my heart internally was like, that's exactly how I felt. I was repulsed by the idea of this person even touch me. And again, somebody looking outside looking in might think, oh, is it something lustful or something weird going on? Does she have a crush? Does he have a? No, it wasn't none of that. It was just a matter of principle, right? Another situation, there was a pastor that, and I talk about pastors a lot because, that's really kind of the only interaction that I have. But for the most part, because in my opinion, it's safe. It is safe, but it can be damaging to your person and your reputation, if in the wrong hands. But the other portion of that is another situation. I met this pastor. I forgot all about him. I go to every single church in Valdosta. I went to this one particular church where the leadership person that was assigned to me was there, this individual, and he gave me a hug, which was appropriate at that time for him and me because that's my leadership person. I need all the love I can get. He didn't mind giving me a hug, and and it was what do you call it? Organic. It just happened, and it was great, and I appreciate it. Then the guy that walked behind him came to give me a hug, and I was like, I don't know who he is, so I'm giving him a side eye. I was like, I don't know who you are, but I actually need a hug, so I'll take one anyway. So I took it, and then the leadership person that was assigned to me gave me the side eye as if to say, that's really unsavory for a female to do. But I'm like, I need a hug. He was offering a hug. I didn't want to be rude, and I got a hug, and I needed it. So what's the problem? You know what I'm saying? But leadership and things like that change because even though that was a standard that after in hindsight I thought about, and I was like, well, that would be great, if you really belong to this church and they love you enough where you keep everything contained in that church. That's the way I was thinking. But then, just as easy as people can love you like that, if somebody whispers in your ear that you're not worthy, then all of a sudden you're treated like garbage. So, and it was a weird dynamic there. Like, but anyhow, so that pastor, I didn't think nothing about it, and I was like, I didn't recognize him. He told me he went to this church, and I was like, oh, okay. And so I went to visit his church again after a very, very long time. And, I started going regularly to his Bible studies. And then I popped up somewhere where there was like a round table at a time that I was having a round table. He was there and he was all buddy buddy, surprised to see me, show me all this love probably. And what I found out about him is he's really insecure. And if he sees that somebody else may be well accepted or somebody else might have clout that he doesn't think, and I don't have any clout at all, by the way. I've been told that I'm doing everything for myself and my organization. And actually, that's true, because I'm client zero. I'm a self-development engineer, hence self-development engineer. And the goal is if I can get this to work for me or figure it out for myself, it can be figured out for others. At least, if nothing else, it'll get the truth out. am, are people that are unsustainable due to lack of ability, intelligence, so forth and so on? Or is it that there are definitely social dynamics and systemic barriers in place that cannot be moved, right? um, Not in the typical sense, or maybe just like the Bible says, God gave paths for everyone. Some are supposed to be the eyes, hands, feet. Some are supposed to live different lifestyles, and that's our place, and maybe that's where we're supposed to be, right? But anyways, this particular pastor, again, this is pastor number two, and this is the only second pastor that I've had to be like, yo, don't even touch me, But the thing about it was that he was all buddy buddy, lovey chummy, come, let me give you a ride, this, that, and the other. I'm like, no, thank you, going about my business. Nothing, anything weird, just because we don't have that type of relationship, and I had other things that was already going. So then I come back to another Bible study, and this is when I'm practically really working on my thing about, untraditionally housed people and how their information is compromised all the time, and that puts them really in harm's way and danger, and how a lot of times people don't have the voice to say anything about it. So when I mentioned that to him in the Bible study, I guess he fell in love with the volunteer lady that was volunteering with all this stuff, because he's just like, oh, such and such. He just preached about how um, nobody's your boss but God. He don't answer about God. That's why he don't get paid for this. Blah blah blah. You know, but now I say, well, hey, when you go to this place to volunteer, can you keep an eye out and let me know if the sign-in sheets are being manned? Oh, I don't mess with such and such ain't no joke. Such and such and such. And I was like, here's the reason why. And I was about to talk about the compromisation of information. Oh, I don't know what you're doing, and I ain't never tried to know. Such and such. All of a sudden he's discounting me and discrediting me, and not allowing me to express what needed to be expressed. So and I was just like, why did he even bring that person's name up? Because now it's going to look like I mentioned that person's name, which I did not, because that's not my goal, because that person is just a volunteer. So subsequently, in order to chase clout, he probably went and told her about his devotion to her and how this person asked about this and that. Next thing I know, because I do follow this individual, because they have a lot of community events and things that they do and they're going on. And it's good to see people that are doing the right thing. But, she makes a post that, I'm just a volunteer. I'm only a volunteer, nothing else. And she's married. So I don't know if this guy is like all over. And he started dressing differently, dressing real loudly, vibrantly. And I call it the church pimp dress, where you got the feathers in the hat and the bright red suits and, whatever. But I ain't think nothing of it. I'm like, okay, that's whatever. I come because I have a word. So came again, and the next time he's just like, oh, I got a bone to pick with you. And he's real saucy about it, all dressed up again, like overly dressed, which he normally doesn't do. But again, like, he started doing this thing where this girl is, and he's married. This thing where this girl is, and he started doing that, and he was saying it like trying to be cool, and keep in mind this guy's probably like 60 something. He's trying to be cool, like taking it back to 90s slang. I got a bone to pick with you. I got a bone to pick with you, giving me the side eye, looking me down. And, his wife is there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you even talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. And so he just continues saying it over and over again. He's trying on the words to make sure it looks good on him. So I asked his wife, hey, you know, lady such and such, what's he talking about? She's like, I don't know, and I'm like, well, if I was somebody's partner, I would want to know. I would need to know. She was just like, oh, that's toxic. I don't know, and I don't care. That's his business. And so one of the other ladies that are longtime members there, she says, oh, I know what he's saying. He's saying that you're a mystery to him, because he kept saying I was a mystery to him because you work outside of the lines, but you're still standing, you know. And that's not what he said. That's what she said. But it just, all of it was weird to me. And I said, okay, no problem. So the next scenario here, I'm like, okay, this dude is a clown, but it's okay. I still love, I would truly say this to all my pastors and all my pastors, any pastor that I've been to your place and your church, and you've actually given me the time of day, meaning that you've allowed me to come to your church. You've actually communicated with me, my wants and needs, or extended anything to me, whether it be a conversation, counseling, advice, a platform, or any type of need that I had at all, just a smile. You are my pastor. And the deacons, I feel the same way. Not because these pastors or deacons have any affiliation with me, that they like me, or they even care about me, or even they just acknowledge me at one time. And that's enough. And the reason why is not anything personal with them, is all about business with God. It's kingdom business, And it's about, uplifting these people that are supposed to be able to households of God. But the thing about it is that when I look at it deeper, though, what if these aren't really households of God? Because I've seen a lot of things, but I do see the good in people, period. And the bottom line of it all is that God owns everything, right? And so that means even the pastors and the deacons. And so, and even, and it goes from pastors, deacons to sisters and brothers in the church. And so you're always looking for the best, right? Because the Holy Spirit in you, that's how it has to operate. But now back to this pastor that I'm talking about, pastor number two. So I see him in the parking lot, and just like with the pastor number one, I was, there was a situation where professionally I was upset about something, and you could tell he wanted to be forgiven. Like a little boy, he just ran up to me and hugged me around the waist. But nothing I could do. I hugged him back, kind of begrudgingly at first, and I thought about it, and I was just like, yeah, that's cool. He's a good person. So hugs abounded, and then, when I found out that, um, he has a manipulative manner, I was just like, don't touch me at all. Now, with this particular pastor, same way, forgiveness. I forgave because I'm just like, he's just a clown. He don't know any better, and he needs love, and he's insecure. I've seen situations, like I said, another pastor would get up and speak, and he would give him props on how he's good looking and well spoken, and he got this beautiful wife and this big congregation. Don't get no. I mean, it's not all that. It's God. It's God that does everything. You're being insecure, sir. You are no less than this man. You know what I'm saying? You have a gorgeous wife. You got to appreciate what you have. You have a congregation that's nice. You have the ability to be well spoken and to counsel people. You have this position of pastor. Use it. You know, and so I had gotten over all of the dumbness, and I was just like, that's where I saw that he really just needed love. So I went to the church. He was driving a different vehicle. I didn't know. I was crossing the street. I saw the Jeep on the cross, and I saw Florida tags, and I was just like, oh, didn't think nothing of it. Then the truck went into the church parking lot, and I figured, well, maybe it's just a person visiting for the church, whatever. The person got a car. I didn't have my glasses on. I couldn't really see. But unbeknownst to me, it was the pastor, and he was like holding back or hanging back, waiting until I got in before he came in. I didn't realize that was happening. But after I got in, 10 minutes later, he comes in and gives me this fist pound thing. I'm like, sir, I don't like that because I'm a female. Do not be fist pounding me. I prefer you just keep your hands to yourself. I didn't say that, but that's how I feel. I don't like that. Because I am marginalized, some people will do that. Don't touch me at all. You don't have to touch me, period. you know? But then as he gave his sermon on action and truth and whatever, and when I come into love. And, at the end, I said, well, I'm the same way. I'm not getting paid for anything I do, so I can speak my truth. And the truth is that we need to be in action and truth. Sometimes your presence can be an acknowledgement as a testimony. I walked in the parking lot. I didn't know that was you, until you walked in afterwards. But the fact that you hung back for 10 minutes, that tells me that there's something, that needs to be fixed, you know? And I was like, I do need my hugs and whatever. And the thing about it was that when I walked in, his wife immediately hugged, beautiful warmth. And I had bought some things that I wanted to share with them. So I bought, those things. Then another sister came in, a hug. And the testimony that was given by another sister was how this lady at work, she was having a rough time or whatever, but somebody just gave her a hug and then she got a double dose. And that's the same thing that happened to me. Testimony on testimony. And so then after the service, the Bible study or whatever, the pastor, I'm walking out the door, I'm saying goodbye to everybody, his wife, everybody. And I'm walking out the door, and all of a sudden he envelopes me in this big hug. Imagine like a huge chow, a huge dog, like you're walking out the door, a huge dog attacks you. That's what it felt like. I was immediately enveloped in all of him, like just, I couldn't breathe, like literally. And I got a picture and I'll post it. I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, help. I'm literally, the way the picture is literally what I was like, help, because I was suffocating. His wife was right behind him. But again, she doesn't get involved. She doesn't get involved in anything. She probably thought I was just joking, but literally I was suffocating. And so I sent a text afterwards to both him and his wife. And usually I try to do pastor and pastor wives text together so you don't copy and paste everything. I don't want any misunderstanding. And sometimes those people are insecure, not because of anything that you did, but maybe they had instances with um, other people that go to church or people in general where, they have compromise. For me personally, like I said, most people look at me as a little kid or just a little scallywag. So I've never really had a problem that I'm aware of. You know what I'm saying? Nothing like that. And I've actually had people tell me, that I thought, oh, they were such a good person, never, never, never. But you see them when they interact with different people, like, okay, now they do have that tinge. Fortunately, it's not with you, so you don't have to worry about it. But nothing like that. But I wanted to be clear, but I didn't want them to make it feel like I was saying something else, because I'm pretty sure that pastors and people in leadership have lots of situations where things can look a little weird or compromised. And I try to be very clear because I don't want anybody to ever think there's anything outside of what actually is. And so I was just like, hey, from this point on, I just was honest. This pastor almost suffocated me. From this point on, I'm only taking hugs from the ladies. And that's it. Then the next time I came to the Bible study, all was good. And then, I was talking about these hormonal changes that I'm going through. And I said I wanted to talk to it on the side with the wife by herself. But since we're here, we're going to have this conversation. And how basically with me doing the Christian Connection, I felt like I was being passed around. Like I'm going to every church. Not that these churches are asking for me, but in a spiritual and emotional sense, I'm giving my heart and soul. I'm giving the inner workings of me to these churches, and they don't care. I'm being used and talked about and passed around. Like, get out of here. You go there. And that's the kind ones, right? And so, then he said, and I talked about the spirit of lust, because I actually had a pastor a long time ago tell me, and, I didn't feel any creepy feelings towards him. He just had that spirit that didn't come, had anything to do with me, because I was upset because he wasn't looking at me in my eyeballs. I'm like, sir, why are you not looking at me in my eyeballs? I'm talking to you. And I thought he was discounting me because I looked marginalized. But no, he was honest. He had an issue with lust. And I was like, well, thank you for your honesty. These are things I really need to talk about. Can we meet next week and talk about it? Next week came. None of them were there. They didn't show up. And then he had nerve to talk to me in a grocery store, so I was mad at him. But back to pastor number two. So pastor number two, um, yeah, so then the third time, I asked him about that because he was just like, I asked him a question, but he didn't answer it directly. We were in the Bible study. So I asked his wife about it. She was like, I don't know. I said, I guess I'll have to ask him. She was like, go on and ask him. So I went to ask him about it. And then he put his hands on me. Like, he grabbed my neck and shook me around, grabbed my shoulders and shook me around. Again, nothing lustful or weird about that. It's just, I don't like you touching me like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm a woman. I want to be handled gently. If you got to, nothing about my presence tells you that I want you to shake me around. You know what I'm saying? And I just got finished telling another pastor that. And so I didn't know how to say it, but at this point, I'm mad. I'm just like, don't touch me at all. I didn't say that, but what I sent was, and I talked to his wife about putting them both in a group chat together. She was just like, no, it was his business, it's his business. I'm like, all right. I get tired of copying and pasting everything. So, I asked her to rate the food that I provided. She gave me a good score on that. And so I wanted to address the pastor on just not wanting him to touch me anymore. I like going to the Bible study. And again, I go to different Bible studies, so don't make any assumptions. I go all over. This is a completely different pastor, but go to the Bible study, and and I just don't want you touching me, period. I don't. I don't like it because a lot is communicated through touch. And communication means that, I don't appreciate you, your child. And if it's dishonest, that's again, self-esteem becomes easy for a woman when she's disgusted, but the idea of having be in touch without love. And this has nothing but to do with celibacy, but just being in touch to me is a very intimate thing. You know what I'm saying? It communicates a lot. And if there's anything inauthentic about it, like the first pastor I felt was, it went to a point where it's manipulative. Not that it will always be that way, but it has been. So I don't want him touching me at all. You know what I'm saying? Unless there's an issue where I feel like he feels like he needs to be forgiven for something, or where God calls him to, and you can feel it when that happens. But I will probably immediately say no anyways. But then the second pastor, I didn't want him to touch me because inauthentic. I'm seeing how he has these clown conversations about people and with people in their presence, without their presence. I'm sure the same is with me. And if somebody flows the conversation one way, he'll actually probably chime in the same way just to be accepted. So I don't want you touching me, sir. And then you're trying to communicate out of insecurity, because what grown man shakes a 50-year-old woman around? And then I spoke to one of the sisters. She was like, he does that while he's in front of her husband. I don't want to be handled like that. I don't care. I'm a grown woman. Do not put your hands on me and shake me around. That's violent activity. Don't do that. Don't do it. It needs to be gentle. Either you giving me a pastorly hug, from the side, from the front, whatever. You can give me a hug and all that. Be gentle. Don't be slamming your hands down on me. Don't do anything rough with me, okay? I need softness, period. And if you can't professionally give me softness, then don't. Don't touch me at all. If you're insecure, well, you got to make sure everybody knows that you think that I'm a kid. Fine. Now, there are pastors and instances where I felt so loved by these pastors in an agape way that I felt that I could relax and be a child, and it was just such a comforting thing just to feel, to be able to do that, to not have your guards up and just be like, just take a deep breath, But that doesn't last always because, again, as a woman that's 50 something years old, there are people wives, there are people that are members, and they may look at it a certain way. They may not see things the same way you do. So, anyways, so much more to this. That's why I feel like a singles ministry is so important. And singles, not singles by themselves, but singles going into couples, because I had a recent incident, again, church situation, and as a woman in ministry, I like to be a personable professional. And so, I like to put things in the heart and soul, but then I like to put things professionally too, because people can take things and twist it around. And again, when they see that you appear to be a marginalized person, they know, they may be mostly good people, but they know that they can twist the story and nobody will have a problem saying anything because the perception is already there. But I'm going to leave it on this note. I'm not going to get into all of that because it's another story. But I'm going to say this. If you are involved in a couple, and men are supposed to lead the couples for the most part, but a lot of times the women do, please, if you are in a church, make sure you're equally yoked. Make sure that you're communicating with each other. If you know that your spouse does not like you interacting with people, of the opposite sex, make sure that you introduce that person to your spouse, those people, each and every time. Make sure that you're not doing anything where you say, don't tell my wife, or I don't want to leave a paper trail, because I have an organization in the process of reincorporation. It may never be reincorporated, but trust me, it's all business. It's personable, professional. It's all business, from a personal standpoint. You know what I'm saying? And there's going to be a paper trail because I need documentation, and that's how you grow. It's always going to be a paper trail. And the lesson I had to learn from a most recent experience that I had is that, hey, if you cannot communicate with me long enough to make sure that the instructions are clear, that the understanding is clear, then we don't need to communicate. And again, if you have anything that you need to hide from somebody because it's a paper trail, or somebody has to say, or in hindsight you say, don't tell my wife, we don't need to be communicating. That means you don't have a relationship or build relationships, whether it be with your spouse, with your pastor, with community members, that are open and honest. And I don't do dishonesty. I don't do that, because once a person is dishonest, they can be dishonest about anything to a point where it's going to impact you. If they're being dishonest to manipulate a perception, and especially to a spouse, that's someone that, they take their time to dress up, look good, smell good, and all that for you. For you to no, to be dishonest, no way. I don't play none of that. And not to say that these people are bad people, because sometimes I don't know a lot about men. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think they're honestly and truly just trying to be helpful. They like to help people. But, you know, the wisdom part comes in when you're being honest. And then I've had conflicting things where another pastor told me, well, hey, if they're honest about, hey, this is such and such and such, they're not going to be able to sleep for days. Well, why did you get married if you're not looking for someone that's equally yoked, or with someone that's equally yoked, and y'all are not willing to grow and build together? Y'all can't be an asset to a community if y'all are being dishonest with each other, to people that are not even in your loop. But anyways, I love y'all with the love of Christ. Peace out.